Why are you laughing, Cass?
Because I figured we should address these before.
And what? Tell the world what that is before I get in trouble, please.
This is me taking my guys out paintballing because I thought it'd be a good idea.
You did not fall down the stairs. Nod your head.
I did
Oh
not.
my God! Please don't. Please don't.
I didn't fall down the stairs. I went paintballing. I clearly suck, but I had a lot of fun, so that's all that counts.
Oh my God.
So you guys have probably been following, I hope so, our feeds. I got my new Kodiak 700 2018. Pretty happy with it so far. Took it out on one run. Really happy with how it went. Just before we get into the Rad relocate and the Snorkel kit with the LEDs, we'll just get into some of the upgrades that we've done since last time you saw the bike. So we upgraded, well, first off, we got a worn hook just to go with the worn winch. And just to correct myself from the last video, this is a 3,000 pound winch, not a 300 pound winch. No. We've also upgraded the bump stop to a KFI. We just ordered that on Amazon just so that, you know, it helps with the leader a little bit. Next up, we got the tires upgraded. It's a mud light. So just looking for a bit of a deeper tread or a more aggressive lug. We upgraded in tire, but not size. We stayed with the 25-inch tires, so we wouldn't have to play with the clutch at all. It'll help keep that smooth ride on the trail, but it'll help obviously with the water crossings and getting into a little bit more muddy situations. So what we did is we got the 25 by 8 by 12 on the fronts, and then we went with the water wheel on the back. So I think that's 25 by 10 by 12s on the back. So we're pretty happy with those so far. Got a good deal on them at the dealership. Swapped up our old tires because we won't be using them anymore. And yeah, that's where we're at today with the bike. What we're going to be doing this afternoon is getting into the Rad relocate, the grill. We've got the Snorkel kit, some sweet LEDs back here. We've got all the tools we need for that. Kyle ordered all those. We begged, borrowed, and stole grammar. So we'll start off by taking off the front rack and a couple of plastics just to see where we're going at. We'll drain the old radiator, some of the fluid from that. The dog's inside because coolant's not good for him. So if you hear him yelping in the background, he's not getting beat. He just wants to be with us. So hopefully later on in the day we'll be able to let him come out and play.
So like we said, we started taking off the rack. It's 4 12-mil bolts, 2 at the front. And these 2 bars right here that come in, and underneath you can get them. You get the light? So right here is the other 2 12-mil, obviously one here, one on the other side. And then up and above, right here, you'll find a 12-mil, or sorry, a 10-mil. And once you have all those out, the front rack can come off. In the hopes that we start pulling this piece of plastic, and we'll be able to see the Rad clearly and start making calls about how we're going to go about this. So like we said, we pulled off the front rack. It was just the 4 12-mil bolts and the 2 10-mil bolts in the fenders. And once we had that off, it made it really easy to pull this plastic piece off. This top one here in front of the light, it just pops right off. So that one you can actually do with the rack still on it, because obviously you have a bunch of maintenance you can do here. Your battery is actually located here in the front, in case you're wondering. But now that we have that off, we have access to get this front panel off. And on the front here, there's this little hole, and as many of you have seen these before, it's just these little pop tabs. So I basically put a flat spade on one side and a pick on the other, and I pull it out evenly and they come right out. So you don't have to go on Amazon or something and buy a bag of 300,000 of them, so you can just rip them out. So now that we've got that off, we just have to play with some of these panels, and without breaking them,
I think it just slides forward. Yeah.
Now we have those both off with full access. So now we're going to take a look at it, see what we need to do, and let you guys know. So we had a good look around, and they definitely know how to jam pack things, but it's not overly complicated. So what we're going to do is, now that we have the front removed, in order to get that Rad out, we're gonna have to, we pull the tire off this side just so we can see. Back there we have the lower rad hose. That's what we're gonna use to drain the coolant out of the machine. And once we've done that, on the other side of the quad, Cass is gonna remove a tire in a second. And we're gonna pull a piece of plastic out right here. We're gonna drain the coolant, and then we should be able to take one fender off, one of these, and then pull out the rad sideways. And then basically we prep the longer hose that was given to us by Wild Boar, and we get that ready inside. We put everything back on, mount the rad on the top. That's the game plan. We're gonna see how that goes. Another good look at things, and in order to do this properly, we're gonna have to remove at least one full side fender. So on that fender is a headlight, which we disconnected right up here. You'll find two connectors like this. You just push the tab down and pull them apart. There's one on the right side, obviously, for this headlight, one on the other side for the other headlight. Once you have that disconnected, pull this fender off. There's a series of 10 mil bolts all underneath, and they're obvious which ones they really are. You're going to see these two here have an Allen head on the other side, which is actually where your footrest is. So you'll have to hold that side. It's a 4 mil Allen. These are all 10 mil. So you pull these two off. Then you've got one here, here, one on the frame, and one on the bumper in the front. And a couple on the bottom. The only two that you have to hold from the other side are the ones in your footrests. So they definitely thought that through. It's very smart. You just got to be careful, because on the other side of the 10 mils, there's just a little steel clip, and that's what these are actually bolted into to hold the plastics together. So don't lose that steel clip or misalign them. So if you're having any trouble, make sure that's still in the right place. So we're going to see how that goes. Once we have this off, we're going to have to kind of get in there and pull the, I think there's four bolts for the rad. Once we have those out, we should be able to disconnect a few things, drain it, and pull the rad out, and then basically replace from there, and then start the actual relocation kit with the bracket. We'll get moving anyway. So now we've got this fender off. Like I said, it was just the 4 mil Torx, or 4 mil Allen you're gonna need, a series of 10 mil Stover nuts, and then there was one 8 mil by the headlight right here underneath the fender, and that was the last one we found. Then the whole fender comes off, and now you're left with what you see here. Down here we have the lower rad hose. I can't find anywhere that's designed to drain the coolant system, so I'm probably going to grab it at its lowest point by the block and lowest point from the rad to try to drain it properly. I'm going to take another look for anything that's supposed to be able to drain it. Usually there is, but I can't see one, so we're going to go ahead with that. Once that's done, we can try and pull this rad out sideways, and then we can start reassembly. Okay, so like I said, I did disconnect the bottom rad hose here. I couldn't find any other drains, so I decided to just do it there. I tried to slow the leak so I could control it, and of course every mechanic understands what it's like to have when you pull off a rad hose or something like that, you get a mess everywhere, which is why we kept our dog in the house. But now that we have that done, I started looking at bottom mounting bolts for the rad and a few other things. I may have to pull off the fan in order to pull the rad out and then take the fan out afterwards. We're going to see how that goes. It looks pretty tight in there, but I did find the fan control wires, which we're going to talk about later. So this guy right here, same as the headlights above, has a little plug connector. You can split that, and that'll disconnect the fan wiring. Later on, we're going to be coming back to extend that. There's also a little breather for the fan hub, I guess. So we're going to have to elongate that for later too, and see where we can. It might be useful to use my wife to get her small hands in some of these spots, but next step.
There's a joke in there somewhere.
So we decided to take the other fender off, and the only difference on this side is you have your ignition and your 12-volt power supply. You don't have to do what I did. I didn't think for a second. You don't actually have to pull these out. That's one way of doing it, and that's fine if you want to do it that way. But if you actually look inside here, you can just unplug the ignition and unplug the cigarette lighter, and then you can take it off just like you did the other side. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. As far as the rest, same thing, 4mm Allen, a bunch of 10mm bolts that you don't have to hold on the other side, they're not with a nut, and one 8mm by the headlight right here. And we'll have this side off too, and I'm just trying to get a better look at how everything's going. Maybe I can, have an advantage this way. I'll know more by the end. Right on. Okay guys, so we came to the conclusion that we definitely have to pull the front bumper off, and then it should be fairly simple after that. But so far, just to catch you up, after I pulled the fender off on the right hand side, if you're sitting on it, I did disconnect the ignition. I did disconnect the 12-volt power source. I did disconnect the fan and the headlight, and I pulled off the top rad hose and the little fan breather here. This is the other end of the fan control. So next, I think we're going to tackle some of these bumper mounts. Take the bumper off, take this fascia off, and then we should be able to get at the rad fairly easily. So we're going to get at that and see how that goes. So we just figured out the next part, and that was pulling off the front bumper, which if you have a winch, there's going to be a winch plate in your way, and you just take these two bottom bolts out, and then you have a series of bolts here and here, and then once you have both sides out, you'll be able to pull that outwards and get rid of that. Next is to pull this front face, and then we'll be right at the rad to do our business.
You might want to disconnect the battery tube, just because the winch is under power, and if we're going to be playing in the cables down there, you're just going to make sure it's a safe work area.
So we have the battery all disconnected, so that if you do have a winch, you have to pull your blue and yellow wire off the power for the motor here on the side. But you can leave it there. So next we're going to be pulling this clip and this clip. Pull this off, we'll be at the rad. Like I said, the front fascia was just a clip here, you pull that out, the fascia came off. And then when I got to the rad, there was a 10mm here, 10mm there, and then the top pieces right here just slide off. You just pull it backwards and you have the rad out. So there it is. Be prepared for more mess, because that always happens. And now that it's out, we can start working on the air box and snorkel kit. We figure while we're here, we would do this battle once. It's just a matter of remembering where everything is. If you're not mechanically inclined, make sure you tag stuff to know what's what. I mean, it's pretty simple, but so far so good. No real hiccups. Slow process, just trying to take it easy and remember everything, and I think we're doing pretty good.
A little bit of a mess, but we'll take care of that.
The wife's having a little bit of anxiety of tearing something down. She's not used to that, but she's doing pretty well. I mean, the bike does look pretty naked. We basically took everything off of it, but there's still more to come off too. Okay, let's keep going at it here. Okay guys, so now that we're done removing our rad, so that's all set aside, we're going to now move on to doing the airbox, the CVT, the diff breathers, and the whole nine. So what I'm doing now is basically removing some of the other plastics. By the time we're done, this thing's going to be a quad with rear fenders, and that's about it. But so I'm getting to the centerpiece here. So I took off the seat. It's really easy, just lift up on it. And then all you've got is a black push tab here, and on the other side you have a 10mm here and a 10mm over here. And then you just got to open up your storage container and pull out 4 Phillips head screws, and then you can remove this whole piece here. So that'll give you access to everything you basically need to get to for the snorkel kit from Snorkel Your ATV. So we're going to get to that. I'm going to take a look at it, remove some parts, and we're going to start replacing. Okay, so now that we have the covers removed, I went ahead and I pulled the, I don't know if this is the intake or the outtake, but this, or exhaust for the CVT. So I pulled one pipe, it was literally 2 Phillips head screws, and then one little prong right here, I pulled it off, and it's sitting over there. So we got to do the same thing with this thing, and then we have to, there's one 10 mil bolt down here, this is your storage container. The other side is held in by little prongs, you just give it a tug, and the whole thing will come out of there. So that's that portion. And then next we have to take off this airbox intake here. So that's going to come off. And then we basically start retrofitting. Got some bikers. We start retrofitting the Snorkel kit on. So now the storage bin for these Kodiaks is basically where a Y pipe is going to travel through. So you have to put a series of holes around it. And I know that can be pretty troublesome for some people or give you some anxiety, but
I'm one of those people.
so you basically just have to follow the instructions, and the first one was a 2 1/4 hole right here, basically next to your, no, this is the front end by your steering. So I just marked it like they asked. They basically just wanted the center point straight up from the one peg, and I just centered the arbor on my drill with a 2 1/4 hole saw, and just did it. As you can see, plastic's fully loaded in there. So there's a couple more holes we're gonna have to do. Another one here, and I think there's 1 or 2 over here, or something like that. But when it's all said and done, you'll see all the plumbing go through it. It's the easiest way to route. It's a very busy bike in the front end, so
Andrew's
we'll
here.
get at it. Okay, so a little bit of cutting and trimming. So now our storage bin, like I said, we did our holes. We got a two 2 1/4 holes, and then 1 2.5 inch hole. So now you can start seeing how the layout's going to work. And we also fit up the new fitting for the airbox lid. I'm going to start doing silicone afterwards just to get everything dry fit. We had to boil that to get it nice and loose, and then we slipped it over and put, I ended up having to use one of the original clamps. I'll fix that afterwards. So that's done, and that's going to start traveling through to our airbox. On the cover here, which is the storage box lid, we had to remove a chunk of plastic here just because it'll start impeding with anything that's in the way over here. So we're well on our way. We're going to start looking at CVT intake and exhaust hoses, and we're probably going to start the routing procedure for the rest of this stuff and figure out which fitting's which, and then get crazy with some silicone. So we made a bit of progress. We're going to do a lot of wrestling. Like I said, we routed everything for the airbox as per the instructions from snorkelyourATV.com through the storage box, and it does work. You're definitely in for a bit of fight. You can't have more than 1 or 2 hands in there, so having a buddy doesn't really help you. But we did get the airbox done. It's all dry fitted right now. It's got a Y pipe here in the box. So you have 2 intakes for your airbox, just so that you have enough air, because that was an issue before with some other bikes, different models, that kind of thing. So now I'm just fitting up the CVT intake and exhaust, and then we get into routing the hose, and we start putting stuff back together and prepping for the rad relocate. It's all out. We just have to extend some wires and find out how we're going to put the rad hose extension for the upper and lower of the rad. So we're getting there. I'm going to zip these on and we'll start talking about routing. We've got everything prepped, all the tubes, CVT, intake, that's all good. We started putting the grill and bumper back on and fenders so that we can see how it's going to route with some panels on, and just tuck them up tight, you know what I mean? And then we just put the old coolant hoses, and what we're going to do is use adapters with our kit and just adapt the old hoses to new hose so that we have enough height and length for everything to come up through. And so far so good. And then I'm gonna have to start looking at the diffs and a few other things and making sure nothing's rubbing and whatever else. So we're good. We're looking pretty good.
So it's almost 11:30 at night, and we actually got quite carried away with some momentum that we were gaining, and we forgot to continue the video. So as you can see, we did quite a bit of stuff since I remember the last time we recorded.
Oh, we're just doing the dry fit now.
Yeah, so we're fitting everything, we're rerouting everything, kind of figuring out how things are gonna fit. We put on the fenders, the bumpers, the snorkel tubes. We cut out some of the fenders here. We just measured them, eyeballed it. We went with an angle just because it looked cooler and it fit better with the front rack here. So yeah, we'll go back over everything with some silicone probably tomorrow, depending on how things go tonight. Caden's here helping. We mentioned him in a previous video with the Yardworks mud mower, and they're just fitting the Rad on the new Relocate with the custom grill. Let me know if I missed anything, babe.
This is the way we're going.
Yeah.
So I just fitted this up so that it's probably gonna spill.
Yeah. There's quite a bit of it on the ground anyways already. That looks sweet.
So that's where that's gonna be. These aren't actually solid yet, but you know where that's going. So that's basically what it's gonna look like.
Looks mean. I'm happy. So far so good. We haven't run into too many snags. Everything's been pretty straightforward. Yeah, I know. But so far so good. I'm optimistic. We're doing pretty good. So depending on how much momentum we keep, we might finish this tonight for the most part.
Yeah, it'll be fitted. There's only a few things to silicone, so
yeah,
it's working pretty well.
Cool. Test drive tomorrow?
Maybe. Got a bobo.
So it's about 1:45. We're pretty much done for tonight. We're gonna call it quits just so we don't start making mistakes. I'm really happy with the progress that we, mostly Kyle, have made tonight. But it looks good. We're gonna have to silicone a few things tomorrow, add some tubing, zip ties, tidy up some of the wiring underneath, put the Rad and plug in the fan. We lost the plug for the fan somewhere inside, so we're gonna have to take it apart anyways, but looks good.
Something like that.
Yeah. So we'll tie it up for tonight, and we'll see you next time we get around to working on this, probably tomorrow. Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see you then.
Safety third.
So what do we do today, babe?
I just roughed up the holes for the Rad Relocate while we have everything on, and then we have to basically take everything back off and reroute some shit.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Loud noises. Cool.
Okay guys, so day 2 of the project. We're doing a lot of dry fitting. I tested how everything's gonna work. A lot of the wiring seems like it's gonna reach comfortably without being stretched or anything like that. So we have the Rad Relocate dry fitted and all the pipes dry fitted. So everything's looking pretty good that way. And we're gonna start moving on to making things a little more permanent. Put some silicone down and I'll show you what's going on. So we now have the Rad Relocate set where we want it. I drilled holes through here on the rack. It fits perfect. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to secure these. Maybe some zip ties afterwards. We'll see how it's going to fit. Here we have the fan hub breather, and that's going to go on, and it's going to go back to its stock location just on the other side. Like I said, here's the fan wiring. It's actually going to work really well. I might have to drill a small hole, put the wiring through it. And then we have to put a hole for the intake and out of the rad. And then once that's done, we can fill it up and sit it back down and then make sure everything fits really well. So I think we're making good progress. As you can see, here's the CVT intake and out. And on the other side, we have the 2 airbox intakes here. So the only way to route this guy was through the frame in the middle, just to avoid the exhaust, which is like right here. So I have some heat tape I'm going to put here anyway, just because colder air is better air. And snorkel kits do lessen the amount of air going to your machine. That's why the snorkel kit comes with 2 intakes. So we just got to make sure everything's good, and then we go back to make it permanent without, you know, screwing ourselves, and you know, we can't do maintenance afterwards without tearing everything apart or something like that. So we're gonna have to be smart about it, but it's looking good. I think it's really gonna work out. I like the positioning of everything. If you're mechanically inclined, I mean, it's pretty simple. Otherwise, the instructions do give you enough to get by, and when we get to the next part, I'll let you know. So far, so good. Okay, guys, so now we have all of the coolant lines run. So they're extended, and we brought them through on each side. We decided to drill holes just because it's easier to route. There's no kinks in the lines, and the fan wiring does meet perfectly. There's plenty of little slack there. So that's all done. The breather tube for the overflow is down there. We just got to set up a fan hub, breather, and it's looking pretty clean now. It's all mounted and drilled in. So we're well on our way now to the final step, is just getting everything fitted permanently now. Yeah, we're gonna have to cut and trim these guys here just to fit on the inlets and that. So
The breathers.
yeah, so this machine already had breathers. They're run up into here. They're eventually gonna get changed up onto the Warrior risers. So doing pretty good now. That's all mounted up. We're gonna have to tighten everything down, double check all of our work, a little bit of silicone, and once we get this tight, we're just gonna do the snorkels and see what we can do about securing them. And I really like what's going on here. Make sure we don't blow up the bike. We'll have to burp it and bleed it from, make sure it has no air stuck in the cooling system. It's looking good. And so here we all are tidied up. It's all dry fit right now. We still have to do silicone in a few spots, and we still have to put her LEDs inside. So we're going to put LEDs here and here so the Grizzly lights up pink. That's what she wants. It's going to look awesome. Everything works well. We already test drove it. Nothing broke. We did have to remove the backing plate here behind the shifter because the one hose runs right here, and when you shift, it actually pushes the plate this way. So we had to remove the plate behind here. That took 2 seconds. Once you take the cover off, it's 2 10mm bolts, and you can slide that right out of there. So that was really good. You do have to watch your coolant levels. Make sure you burp it properly. Right here, to burp it, release some pressure. Make sure there's no air in your cooling system. There's a little 10mm bolt right here. You back off and it'll start steaming out of there, and you'll watch all your coolant levels start leveling out, and you can just top it off or whatever you need. You just got to watch the jug underneath here, make sure it's between low and high, and you're good to go. But no leaks, everything's tight. Performance didn't change, fan runs really well. You can hear the clutches a little bit at high speeds through the snorkels, but no, I mean, it's a great system. We're just gonna have to tidy it up and really make sure we like where it is, and it ended up really clean. So we ended up, like I said, there's holes all over the place, and we just made sure everything fit nice, and everything's still very removable the way we did it. So when you have to service or get to your battery or upgrades or whatever, I mean, it's pretty good. You happy with your snorkels, babe?
Yeah, because I still get to carry this around.
Some teepee.
Yeah, priority one when we're out there. And so that's some room in my storage bin, so I'm really happy about that. Really, nothing else changes for me. functionality wise. It'll be able to do what I want it to do now, so I'm happy with that.
In our next video, we'll put some silicone and we'll do your LEDs.
Yeah.
Right on, babe.
It's a wrap.